We're getting pretty close to harvesting. We're at the point where we're measuring, acidities. There's three main metrics we use to determine, how far along wines are, at least for white wine. It's Brix, which is, how we measure sugars. There is pH, which is kind of like how the wine feels in your mouth. And then there is TA, which stands for titratable acidity, which is just how much acid is in the wine. And that's, what affects kind of tartness. Brix and pH are kind of where we want them. But the acidity last week when I measured was still a bit high. So we're just coming in to do kind of a final check here to make sure that acidity has come down. Then we'll be picking, Monday or Tuesday. It's Friday now. So just kind of our last final check to make sure the grapes are as ripe as we want them to be. This is Farmer John's Vineyard. We're kind of at the top now. We've got a bit of Malbec up on the hillside there. Above us here is the Viognier, which we're here to test. We've got Tempranillo on the far side. And then a bit of orange muscat right here at the bottom. And the Gamay Noir is at the bottom of the hill. We'll test that on our way out. So we're going to test for, Brix, pH, and acidity. And so the first step in doing that is collecting a sample. And we just kind of grab some grapes from different clusters in different parts of the cluster as we walk down the row here. And I actually try not to look. Also, at the cluster, you can be kind of biased. If you're always looking at the grapes that you're grabbing, you're going to grab the nicer looking grapes, the grapes you might want to eat. But that can skew your sample because then you're only pulling ripe grapes. And, we do want the less ripe ones are going to have a nice acidity, and that can be really important for white wine. I mean, they just taste amazing. Wine grapes get so much more sugar than table grapes, so these tend to be, much sweeter than the grapes you have in the store. We don't want it to be overly tart, that's where the acidity comes in. But it can be tough to go off of just taste alone. These grapes are probably somewhere around 22 Brix, which means there's 220 grams of sugar per liter in the grape juice, roughly, which is a ton of sugar. Which means that this has a really high acidity, that super high sweetness is going to mask that, which is why we actually have to come in and measure it. So obviously taste is a great indicator, but it's hard to be accurate because it's just so washed out with sugar. But we're also, looking, especially with red wines, look for more physiological signs of maturity in the grape. A good example is Syrah. We're usually waiting, obviously for our chemistry to come along. But even when we get to, say, perfect numbers for Syrahs, we'll actually continue to wait, even though those numbers are numbers we might like. We're looking for a bit of shrivel, actually, in the grape. It'll start to, get these little dimples or start to look a little bit like a raisin. That's another indicator that it's getting ready, because it's starting to lose some moisture, which is going to increase kind of intensity in the final wine. And then we also look at grape seeds. In the same example, Syrah, when the grapes are young, you bite into the seed and they're, green, they taste really astringent. But later in the season, they'll start to get really brittle and crunchy and turn a dark brown, when you bite into them. And that's another good example that the grapes are physiologically mature enough to pick, and the result of that is you'll get smoother tannin structure in the final wine, whereas if you pick earlier you get more of those kind of bitter notes. It can be a little harsher.